The Cadets memang boleh ditonton seisi keluarga kerana
dia ada family values dan masa sama dia pasal persahabatan juga, pasal adik-beradik juga, and dia banyak juga kelakar-kelakar yang macam ni.
Jumpa saya di Gamers Mangkuk.
Tak ada berita yang lebih baik melainkan berita untuk semua game Mobile Legends. Bang, bang.
Dan jangan lupa stream Syurga Itu Bukan Mudah di Astro.
I'm doing this for you. Thank you.
Good evening. You are tuning in to AWANI Tonight with me, Cynthia Ng. There is no need for the federal constitution to be amended to restrict the prime ministerial candidate to Malays, says Datuk Sri Anwar Ibrahim. The Prime Minister added that there has been no serious request or discussion on amending the constitution so that only a Malay may lead the nation.
Setakat ini tak ada keperluan, tak ada permohonan serius, tak ada perbincangan. Sejak merdeka sampai sekarang, calon Perdana Menteri yang Melayu. Lepas ini pun calon daripada kerajaan pun Melayu, calon daripada pemakam pun Melayu. Jadi maju terus. Hak rakyat, buat semua warga negara kita pelihara. Jaga kepentingan semua rakyat, semua kaum, semua wilayah.
Anwar added that the racial background of the Prime Minister is a non-issue and accused the opposition of trying to create racial strife. The Prime Minister also accused the opposition of trying to play out the upcoming redelineation exercise for electoral boundaries, which must be conducted in 2026. Earlier, Bersatu Youth Chief Wan Ahmad Faizal called for Anwar to use his two-thirds majority in the Dewan Rakyat to amend the constitution to ensure that only Malays can become the Prime Minister. Wan Ahmad Faizal's request came after DAP veteran Lim Kit Siang expressed his hope for Malaysia to one day have a non-Malay Prime Minister. Lim is currently being investigated by the police for his remarks.
A one-way flight from the peninsula to Sabah, Sarawak and Labuan will be capped at 599 ringgit from December 22nd to 24th. Transport Minister Anthony Loke says the fare will be displayed on airline websites from tomorrow.
The initiative covers flights operated by Air Asia, Firefly, Malaysia Airlines and Batik Air. Loke said the Cabinet had approved the move on Wednesday, which is aimed at easing the financial burden on those travelling home for the festive season. He added that the government would absorb the difference in costs for tickets that would have originally cost over 599 ringgit. Loke also said the initiative would be implemented for upcoming festive seasons next year, including Chinese New Year and Hari Raya Aidilfitri.
Meta and TikTok have reported a spike in government requests to remove content on their platforms in the first 6 months of 2023. Data published by TikTok also showed that Malaysia made more requests to restrict content on the video application than any other government in Southeast Asia.
TikTok said it received 340 requests from the Malaysian government to remove or restrict content between January and June 2023, affecting 890 posts and accounts. Meanwhile, according to Meta's latest transparency report, it had restricted around 3,100 pages and posts on Facebook and Instagram from being viewed by users in Malaysia during the same period. The figure was 6 times higher than in the previous 6-month period and the highest since the company began reporting content restrictions in Malaysia in 2017. Meta's report added that the content included criticism of the government, as well as posts that allegedly violated laws on gambling, racially divisive content, hate speech, financial scams and bullying. The government has been accused of backtracking on its promises to protect free speech amid increased scrutiny of online content in recent months. It has denied accusations of stifling online dissent, saying it only curbs provocative posts that play up the 3 Rs: race, religion and royalty.
Following the cabinet reshuffle, the former Natural Resources, Environment and Climate Change Ministry has now been divided into two new ministries, one taken by the Deputy Prime Minister, Datuk Sri Fadilah Yusof, the other by the former minister in charge of the ministry, Nik Nazmi Nik Ahmad. Amlir Ayat, president of Eco Night, shares his views on the move.
The most important thing right now, whether we break them up into two or three or just maintain them into one, is coordination and also communication between the various agencies. Every agency is related to another. For example, you're talking about the Department of Forestry, Department of Irrigation and Drainage, and also agencies which are involved in climate change. These are all interrelated. A lot of policies cannot be taken up properly because of the lack of adequate communication between all these agencies. So if we want these ministries to work, then not only the government agencies, the departments, but also the ministers need to communicate with each other so that we'll be able to come up with sustainable development and sustainable utilization of resources.
Datuk Sri Fadilah Yusof will be taking on the Energy Transition and Public Utilities Ministry alongside his duties as Deputy Prime Minister and being in charge of Sabah and Sarawak affairs. Amlir outlines the importance of engaging with environmental NGOs and other stakeholders as he helms the new portfolio.
I have seen the minister doing some good work in his previous ministry, and I'm sure he can do similarly in this new ministry. And I hope YB Fadilah will also open up his office to meet the various stakeholders from the various parts of the countries because the challenges are increasing. For example, the water management issues, human-wildlife conflict, which relate to his ministry, even though he might not be directly involved with that. So he has to be in constant communication with the people on the ground. This is very important so that he can carry out his duty as effective and as efficient as possible. He has a huge commitment to make with regards to climate change.
Meanwhile, Amlir called for Natural Resources and Environmental Sustainability Minister Nik Nazmi Nik Ahmad to focus on water and forestry management in the coming year.
If we can solve the water issue, for example, in an integrated manner, then we may be able to solve a lot of other issues because water unites a lot of other nature resources. And in the same line, we have to also take care of our forest management so that we can ensure not only the biodiversity, but also the water quality and water quantity will be sufficient and adequate for people's consumption. Water is number one. And I believe that it should be the leading nature resource to guide the management of other resources.
We'll go for a quick break. Stay tuned for more.
Nak stream My Famous Ex-Boyfriend tapi line internet slow? Jangan risau, berita baik untuk pelanggan Astro. Dapatkan Astro Fiber 500 Mbps hanya dengan RM90 je sebulan selama 24 bulan. Harga tetap tau! Langgan sekarang dan dapatkan router Wi-Fi 6 serta pemasangan secara percuma. Dengan Astro Fiber, anda boleh stream hiburan keluarga bila-bila masa. Wi-Fi kencang, kini lagi kencang.
Apa jua yang berlaku di sekeliling kita, pastinya ada punca dan kesan masing-masing. Faktor harga ekonomi, pengaruh politik dalam atau luar negara memberikan impak kepada kehidupan harian kita. Di Niaga Awani kami memberikan gambaran jelas melalui analisis mendalam, merentas pelbagai segmen dan latar belakang. Kami akan bantu anda untuk faham segalanya. Bisnes, ekonomi, pasaran, Niaga Awani, 9 pagi Isnin hingga Jumaat, hanya di Astro Awam.
Welcome back. The United States has ramped up pressure on Israel to minimize civilian deaths as Washington presses its ally to shift to a lower intensity war against Hamas. U.S. President Joe Biden said this when he was asked if he wants Israel to scale back its assault of Gaza by the end of the year.
I want them to be focused on how to save civilian lives, not stop going after Hamas, but be more careful.
Biden's comments came as U.S. National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan met Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and other members of the Israeli War Cabinet to discuss conditions for transitioning to more targeted military operations in Gaza. Israel's Defense Minister Yoav Gallant had said it will take months to destroy Hamas, predicting a drawn-out war, even as his country and his top ally, the United States, face increasing international isolation over the devastation in Gaza. On Tuesday, Biden delivered his strongest criticism of Netanyahu's handling of the conflict yet, warning that Israel's indiscriminate bombing is costing it international support.
Hungary has blocked the European Union from approving a $54 billion financial aid package for Ukraine. This came hours after the bloc agreed to formally open membership talks with Kiev. Leaders meeting in Brussels said that they would revisit the issue next month after Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orbán refused to back the extra money for Ukraine.
Charles Michel, the president of the European Council, said that all but one of the EU's 27 countries backed the funding package for Ukraine. The collapse of talks on the funding follows repeated failures by the US Congress to agree a $60 billion aid package proposed by the White House for Ukraine. That has raised fears of weakening resolve by the West to sustain the country as it continues to battle against Russia. The failed funding efforts were announced hours after EU leaders agreed to open accession talks with Ukraine, a milestone on Kiev's path to join the EU once the war with Russia is over.
Two trains collided in heavy snow in Beijing today, sending a total of 515 people to the hospital, including 102 with fractures. A preliminary investigation into the incident found that the snowy weather had caused slippery tracks and signal deterioration, leading to the head-on collision.
The accident occurred on Thursday evening when the last two carriages of a metro train separated from the carriages in front of them. State broadcaster CCTV reported that 423 people had been discharged from hospital as of Friday morning. Another 67 were still being treated, while 25 people were under observation. Beijing has been hit by snowstorms in recent days, causing transport delays and school closures across the city. Warnings remain in place for icy roads, extreme cold and further snowfall. Temperatures are also expected to drop to minus 11 degrees Celsius overnight.
Based on the latest data by the Ministry of Higher Education, the number of female STEM graduates continues to surpass male graduates. But the statistics show that the opposite when it comes to employability. Sim Yilin from Girls in Tech discusses some of the challenges and misconceptions girls and women face in the STEM industry.
Commonly, the gender biases, for example, like people would think, because I'm from tech, right, in tech field, people would think like women in terms of technical competency is like less competent comparing to men. And then on top of that, like programming logic and also problem solving logic, people would tend to also think that men is actually better. And then also some common stereotype, like women is not interested in tech. So this type of uncommon biases would lead to like misconception for women.
Aerospace engineer Uma Shangri Aruldas believes that there was also a lack of mentorship programs that feature role models who are advocating for more women in STEM.
It's a good thing that the STEM education industry in Malaysia, that we have internships to assist the STEM graduates in order to prepare them before going into the work life or their career life, or giving it a perspective on how it could be. But I believe that there are lacking of mentorship programs per se. That would have been one of the key areas of motivation that drains women of not having or lack of role models. That would be one of the major points of why that would hinder women to be employed. And also the other question goes by how many women are coming forward in order to apply for a job application itself.
Catch the full conversation on It's About Youth every Friday at 10:30 p.m. only on Astro AWANI.
Women are within the role of the engineering.
That wraps up AWANI Tonight. I'm Cynthia Ng. Thank you for watching and good night.